Tommy Morrison got famous for, he was a good boxer, like a really good boxer, and then he got famous from that Rocky movie. He was fucking jacked when he was young. I mean, he looked fantastic. He beat Razor Ruddock. He stopped him, dropped him with a big left hook. Tommy Morrison had a nasty left hook. He just couldn't win the big fight.
Tommy Morrison is the epitome of an American champion. The blonde giant with the pumped up body was one of the most recognizable heavyweights of his era and still remains a favorite of boxing fans of the 90s. The knockout power of his left hook was legendary. Some even called the guy White Tyson and dreamed of seeing Iron Mike and Duke face each other in the ring, but it was never destined to happen. Nevertheless, Morrison's legacy is alive and we can still enjoy it to this day in all its glory.
Morrison just doing a great job of the body and Robinson goes down. And before that happened, it lent credence to the phrase, out but not down. Absolutely right.
Friends, today's video will be dedicated to Tommy Morrison's top 10 knockouts. Please don't forget about the likes, comments with forwards, and subscribe to the channel so you will never miss any upcoming videos. Here we go. Number 10. Mike Robinson. In 1989, Tommy Morrison was at the very beginning of his career. Already at that time it was clear, this guy was unlike any other. The first time he fought as a professional was a year earlier, and by that time he had already 13 wins in a row, 7 of them in the first round. This huge bulldozer drove over his opponents without pity or compassion, and the list of his highlights grew from fight to fight. Another addition to the collection was to be the little-known Mike Robinson with only 9 appearances in the ring. Tommy looked like a Scandinavian berserker. He would fly up to his opponents with wild ferocity and smash his body with both hands, all the while trying to catch his head with a left hook. All Robinson was doing is hiding in the block and constantly backing up, occasionally throwing 1-2s. Duke pressed Mike with all his might and continued to punch furiously, and that's when Robinson's defense cracked.
Morrison just doing a great job of the body and Robinson goes down. And before that happened, it lent credence to the phrase, out but not down.
After absorbing a tremendous amount of damage, the guy still managed to get back on his feet and survive to the second round. There he even tried to recover, threw a right hand but almost flew off from a power jab. And then the Duke murdered his insides with his hooks.
Robinson showed that he came here for a reason at least. Huge body shot, and down goes Robinson. Good shots, and near the kidney area. It's the kind of thing you wake up the next day and you might have a broken bone. Steve Smoker wisely stops this fight.
Number 9. David JACO. Let's look back in time again to admire a young Morrison. We're talking about 1989 because for that calendar year alone, he can safely be inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame. 19 appearances in 12 months for a heavyweight is something inhuman, even with not the greatest opposition. No wonder it was during the time that the guy scored most of his best knockouts, and we'll talk about one of them right now. In mid-September, Duke was going to fight against David JACO, a well-known journeyman who once again shared the ring with many legends of the sport. But for the same reason, he hasn't won in a very long time. As in each of his performances, JACO had a tremendous advantage in height and reach, but he was not too skillful in taking advantage of nature's gifts. After holding Morrison on the jab for only a few seconds, David avoided the godlike left hook by only a few centimeters and went into the clinch. Once again, David was in the middle range, and before he had a chance to realize it, his soul was detached from his mortal shell as the blonde beast in front of him put his entire mass into a single murderous hook.
And I have to face a right-hander.
There's the left hand, JACO's down and probably out. That's it.
Well, the Morrison left hook, which is a good one.
A deepest knockout from Tommy.
I guess we'll have to wait for a tabulation by our punch profile.
Number 8. Mike ACEY. 1990 was the peak of popularity for the prominent American. Having noticed an unusual and bright boxer, the famous Sylvester Stallone invited the guy to take part in his movie Rocky V, where Morrison had to play the apprentice of a retired Rocky Balboa. Shooting made a lot of adjustments to the young talent's schedule, and he could not perform 100 times a year as before. But even so, he appeared 3 times in the ring, including one against Mike ACEY. Mike once started out with 10 wins in a row, but has since racked up almost as many losses. ACEY, chubby and not the most athletic, was the first to attack the brutal jock. Apparently, he wanted to catch Morrison off guard, but it didn't work, because now the Duke became more active. Tommy flew at his opponent with a hook, but ACEY's response was a homemade quick dive. "Okay, no problem," Tommy said, and a few seconds later, he landed a fatal right hand.
We'll see.
Down to one knee from a right hand. 5.
His opponent immediately sat up, but decided to get back into the fight, where the very same left hook was already waiting for him. Morrison fired the trademark punch and scored another knockdown.
If I was a betting man, I'd say yes.
So much for that.
With no time to put out the sparks in the eyes, ACEY once again ended up on the canvas after a straight hand, and this time for good.
We'll be back with more.
Number 7. TOIA. 1994 was a tough year for Tommy. He lost the WBO title he had earned in a fight against the legend George Foreman not that long ago. He had only one title defense, and then Michael Bentt came on the scene and defeated the star. Now Tommy had to return to the win streak and prove that despite losing the belt, he was still in business and could compete at the top. The first opponent for Duke on his comeback was Samoan boxer TOIA with a 12-3 record. In this bout, the first prerequisites for Tommy's decline became apparent. He was slower than usual, didn't explode with insane series, and wasn't moving forward as actively as before. However, the wilder skill base and abnormal natural athleticism embedded in the guy was doing his job. TOIA tried to think of something at first, jumping on Morrison with monotonous attacks, but after that he began to get countered with an uppercut and a left hook to the body. Feeling his opponent's power, TOIA began to back away, but the American immediately exploded with his hook and the first knockdown was scored.
Nice left hook from Morrison. Good shot there, right on the chin. And the smoking Samoan on the deck.
The Samoan desperately clung to life, initiated a clinch, but couldn't stand forever, and Duke caught the guy with his left hand in the 3rd round.
And he's gone down now from a right uppercut, but possibly more of accumulation of punches than one single shot there. Well and truly doused by Tommy the Duke Morrison. So that's a good comeback fight for Morrison, no doubt about that. Good shot too, that right uppercut. So not the hardest punch he's ever thrown.
Number 6. James TILLIS. The release of Rocky V made Duke a real superstar. He was recognized in the streets, invited to public events, and thanks to his natural charisma and brutal appearance, the guy had no shortage of ladies. All this made the young Titan's head spin, but he never forgot about his main goal, to become a champion, and stubbornly continued to return to the ring. Immediately after Mike ACEY's masterful murder, Tommy was given a new fight, this time against a more or less distinguished opponent. James TILLIS was known for his quick hands and for being the first to last the entire allotted time against Mike Tyson. The only thing I don't understand is why the poor veteran on the decline was put in the ring against this clump of testosterone. Morris was like a bull who saw a red rag in front of him. He rushed at TILLIS with the desire to rip his head off, and with one of the first hooks, he folded his opponent.
Still trying really to get himself back in. But good left hand, down goes TILLIS.
I guess he does have a good left hook.
But that was only the beginning, because the maniac living inside Morrison burst out and started beating James as hard as he could.
And a good combination combination again by Morrison. A left and a right behind it, an uppercut, and down goes TILLIS. Very impressive.
The skilled boxer was thrown around the ring like a puppet with hooks and right uppercut, and he didn't come out of his groggy state even for a few seconds.
That's it. And that's in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Or 8 and 52 seconds. My addition's never been very good.
As a result, in less than 3 minutes, Duke scored 3 knockdowns, thus showing the referees that the veteran had to be saved.
And the accuracy of the punches, there you see the uppercut, a good example. And there would be a third one. There would be a third knockdown, which would invoke the 3 knockdown rule. Morrison pursuing and...
Number 5. Harry TERELL. The young and spectacular Tommy became more and more popular with every new finish, and with his wild by any standards pace of performance, a title fight was around the corner. After Mike Robinson's funeral, Morrison managed to put 3 more opponents to sleep, and then in 1989 he went to fight Harry TERELL. The veteran started his career 13 years ago when the Duke himself was barely 7, by the way, and TERELL's loss-win ratio was close to 50-50. Tommy looked like a rock man, especially compared to the lankier and leaner Harry. It seemed like every punch he took could send the poor man to the moon, but the latter had a plan. The veteran tried to take the athletic newcomer by the sheer volume of his moves and the lightness on his feet. But no matter how hard TERELL tried, Morrison could find a way to pin him closer to the edge of the ring and unload some nice hooks. Harry knew about the Duke's strongest weapon and would have sold his soul to get away from the hook, but he missed and ended up down anyway.
Jab a little bit more.
There's the left hook, and down goes TERELL.
An excellent counter left hook from Morrison. That shows you...
Quickly jumping out of the knockdown, the American now went into a clinch, but didn't anticipate everything and missed a nuclear overhand.
At 227 pounds. Big right hand. If he gets up, I'll be the most surprised person in the Coliseum.
This fight should be over. Hal Munoz should stop this fight.
He has got to his feet, but he stopped the fight.
That blow nearly threw the veteran over the ropes and had him coming to his senses for a long time yet.
And you can see down in the lower part of the corner, Logan Hobson, a punch profile.
Number 4. Marcellus Brown. The loss of the belt kind of became the point of no return for Duke. With each show he slowed down in one aspect, then another. And a controversial draw with Ross Purity, where Morrison almost died, finally made people believe that we may never see the old savage in the ring again. But it was too soon to dump the former champion. He could still make a show, which Tommy demonstrated very well in his fight against unstable puncher Marcellus Brown. The huge Marcellus took advantage of his superiority and kept Tommy away from himself, and when that didn't work, he clinched right away. No longer as explosive as in his youth, the Duke was stuck in the big man's arms and unable to explode. Several times he tried charging uppercuts, but the amplitude was not enough for a clean hit. In the second round, Brown imposed the clinch even more actively and also resorted to punches to the back of the head, for which he was stripped of a point. And this surprisingly cheered Morrison up.
Brown very active and goes down for the left hook.
He cranked his power to the full and unleashed a jab at his opponent's head, which immediately resulted in a knockdown. The kid tried to recover and survive, but the relentless veteran went into Terminator mode and landed a punch.
I think the end is just about upon us.
And there's the hook, as Randy pointed out, over the lazy right hand.
With just one punch, he took out the fearsome Goliath, confirming his status.
One mighty left hook.
Number 3. Bobby QUARRY. Many of you probably remember such a unique heavyweight as Jerry QUARRY. He had everything he needed to be a champion, but the Irishman never reached his goal. Although he gave great fights to many legends of the sport, many people know about Jerry, but not so many people know about his younger brother, Mike. But I'm gonna surprise you more. I'll tell you there were 3 brothers QUARRY, and the youngest of them performed in the mid-90s when the twisted fate brought him against Tommy Morrison, who was hungry for human pain. Bobby went to the fight in his big brother's famous green shorts, but it didn't help him much. QUARRY's punches were many times weaker than the bombs the young Duke threw at him, and that had a huge effect on the fight. Tommy was often missing punches, but his response was to split the air in the arena. Yet Bobby seemed to have the support of the family fortitude. He also swung his body well and avoided the most vicious punches, especially the left hooks that reeked of death. But no matter what, at the end of the first round, Bobby had his back pinned to the ropes and only the bell saved him from the knockout. In the next round, the situation came to its logical conclusion.
Right hand, down he goes. Crashing right hand.
I don't think he's getting up. That's it. Over. He's out.
A real hammer landed on Morrison's right side that completely knocked out the most untalented of the QUARRY family.
Light jabs and then right about on the ear. Perfect shot.
Number 2. Joe HIPP. In the fall of 1991, the feisty Tommy fought for the belt for the first time, but Ray Mercer, who had prevented the blonde from qualifying for the Olympics a few years earlier, beat him again, this time in the 5th round. To get back in the title race as soon as possible, Morrison needed to regain his position and fight only against the top opposition. That's how after just 1 year, Duke was paired with the tough Joe HIPP. The boxer was known for being the first Native American to take the title from a major promoter. Duke had a very unusual bout. Usually acting as a wild daredevil, here Morrison acted very cautiously. He worked a lot with his jab and only occasionally opened up to punch Joe's body. The boss, being a lefty, was looking for a good angle to attack, but was missing for a long time until the 4th segment. He very accurately hit his opponent with his left hand.
And of course, facing a right-hander is nothing new. Hey, there's a good combination by Joe HIPP.
Best sequence in the fight for Joe HIPP.
And the left landed right on Morrison's chin.
This success inspired HIPP. He began to open more and more, and then bang!
And the first one we've seen.
Oh, and a right to the chin puts Joe HIPP down.
A right straight hand introduced the Indian to the canvas. The now inspired Tommy flew to finish, but Joe made no more mistakes and overcame the pressure. The encounter again turned into a positional war with varying success, but everything was decided in the 9th round. HIPP was leading, but wobbled by a truck from the right.
You can't fight with your mouth open. Oh, a good right hand by Morrison, and that hurts Joe HIPP. Joe HIPP is in trouble. Joe HIPP is down. A right hand from Tommy Morrison.
Joe's legs danced and he desperately survived, but by the law of nature, there can only be one king. Tommy Morrison turned on all his reserves and in a last-ditch assault, knocked the impenetrable Joe HIPP out with an eerie hook combination.
And another right. Boy, the right hand doing almost all the damage. That uppercut missed, but Joe was just not in the position to defend himself and went down.
Number 1. Donovan Ruddock. As sad as it was, the fight against Donovan Ruddock was the swan song of the career of what was once the most unusual heavyweight of the 90s. But first things first. After losing to Bennett, Morrison returned. He came back with 6 wins and 1 draw. Again, there was some talk of his title ambitions, and this despite the fact that the guy was not at his best. Nevertheless, Tommy was given an opponent, a victory over whom implicitly meant a fight for the belt. Donovan Ruddock was the final hurdle. The big-hearted Canadian with the diamond jaw had been through terrifying fights against Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis in recent years. Now he wanted a simpler opponent, but also a big name in the game, and Duke was perfect for the role. Razor started the encounter with a fantastic right uppercut. The punch was so incredible that Tommy reluctantly had to kneel down in front of him. The American also gave up the initiative to work as the first number, but it was all in order to revenge. In the 2nd round, Duke hit with a mighty uppercut and sent Donovan into a standing knockdown.
Morrison absorbs the punch, but he still paid for it.
Oh, he hurt Ruddock with a right uppercut. Razor Ruddock got rocked by the same punch that knocked Morrison down. Lifted, give him a standing 8 count. That's bizarre. Because of
The score became 1-1 and both boxers began to wait, waiting for one of them to make a grave mistake. The fans set through the third and almost finished the fourth round in anticipation, but then Morrison nearly killed the Canadian again, this time with a left hook.
There's a hook by Ruddock, and it may have hurt Morrison. Big left hook!
Ruddock went to get his revenge. He landed a dozen good uppercuts, but Tommy had the right time, and when the razor opened, he blew his head off.
He needs to buy about 10 more seconds, and it's a long one. He will not do it. Oh my, it's over. Toward the end of the round, Ron Lipton says, I have seen enough.
Knockout with a left hook, just like in his prime.
Comes in here, that big left hook, snapping back the head is what...
Reckless in and out of the ring, that was Tommy Morrison. Genetically gifted, this guy was a real talent for boxing and could have been much more, but learned too early about popularity and all the troubles that come with it. The fate of the Duke is very tragic, and its finale is as tear-jerking as any drama, but there's nothing we can do about it. The best thing to do is to remember Tommy Morrison as a young, all-powerful guy who had amazing fights and scored such finishes that many of the heavyweights of today would do well to learn from him.